व्यासाय विष्णुरूपाय व्यासरूपाय विष्णवे नमो वै ब्रह्मनिधये वासिष्ठाय नमो नमः। हरिः ॐ श्रीमद्धर्मवीयोद्धान्तर्गत रामकृष्णवेदव्यासात्मक श्रीलक्ष्मी हयग्रीवाय नमः। हरिः ॐ श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थभगवत्पादाचार्यगुरुभ्यो नमः। श्री जयतीर्थरीकाचार्यगुरुभ्यो नमः। श्री ब्रह्मण्यतीर्थगुरुभ्यो नमः। श्री श्रीपादराजतीर्थगुरुभ्यो नमः। श्री व्यासराजतीर्थगुरुभ्यो नमः। श्री विजयेन्द्रतीर्थगुरुभ्यो नमः। श्री वादिराजतीर्थगुरुभ्यो नमः। श्री राघवेन्द्रतीर्थगुरुभ्यो नमः। श्री रघुनाथतीर्थ शेषचंद्रिकाराय गुरुभ्यो नमः। श्री सत्यध्यानतीर्थगुरुभ्यो नमः। श्री सुमणेन्द्रतीर्थगुरुभ्यो नमः। गुरुपरंपरा अस्मद्गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ। Today I am going to talk about the doctrine of sAkshee. There are two words there. sAkshee comes from Veda, the east, and doctrine comes from the west. East meets the west. However, we need to use these words the way they are used in their respective systems. Like doctrine, like you say, political doctrine, it's a belief system basically, or religious doctrine, and so on. So doctrine is basically something that a group of people sat together and believed in, so it became a doctrine by itself. And if you don't belong to that group, you have a different doctrine. That's how doctrines work. However, sAkshee belongs to Veda. Sakshi cheta kevalo nirgunascha. In the Gita also, gatir bharta prabhu sakshi nivasa sharanam sarat, etc. So it's there in our agamas. See, we all have two types of knowledge. All right? We will talk about it a little bit. However you look at it, our own experience is the starting point of all philosophy. A philosophy which kind of ignores the starting point is only good on paper. Right? We know dharma, but given a circumstance, how come one person chooses this and another one chooses that? So there is something in them that's making him do. What is that is the question. Is it the brain? So we can ask that question. We will get into all that in a moment. Can you open the screen a bit? Anyway. So we all have, first of all, let's look at ourselves. Adhadhyatmam. Whenever Shrutis teach about you, it starts with Adhadhyatmam. We are going to talk about you. Yade tad gacchati vachamano nene tadupasmarati. What are the Upanishad says? Adhadhyatmam. Shotram chakshusprasham rasanam ghranam adhisthayam anisthayam. Gita also says that. So we have these five sensory organs, and then there is the mind, which is kind of a repository for the five sensory organs. And this whole thing is what Shastra calls a vritti jnana. Vritti means it is produced. Like 20 years ago, we didn't know what a cell phone was. Nobody had it. But now we know what a cell phone is, which means what? That knowledge was produced in us because it is a vritti jnana. So the five sensory organs, the eye gives you the knowledge of shapes and colors, and so on. The tongue gives you different tastes. You all ate food just now, so you know what I'm talking about. Then through your ear, you hear sounds and music. And then your nose gives you different odors and smells. And finally, your skin gives you a different sense of touch, rough, smooth, hot, cold. So these are deposited in the mind. Some people say that the mind transforms because of this. Now, we don't remember all the things that we see. I'll give you an example. You go to office every day, you drive. There are a lot of these trees on the side. But you don't remember any of those. How many trees did you see? Your eye has actually seen them. But nothing got registered. It's because there was no impression created on your mind. We call it samskara in Sanskrit. So whenever a samskara or an impression is created, it creates memory for you. Say for example, you are driving back from your office. One tree has caught on fire. A lot of fire engine, traffic jam going on. Now you come home and tell your people about, look what I saw today. So it created an impression on your mind and hence memory. That's how memory works. So memory is created whenever the mind is impressed. Similarly, even in your dreams, when you wake up, you don't remember a thing. What dream did I have last night? However much you think about it, you won't know. But there are some dreams you will remember for the rest of your life. Because it has left such a deep impression on you. That's how mind operates. Now, these are about material objects. What about transcendental objects? Transcendental means atindriya. How do we get the knowledge of transcendental entities? For example, say time. Nobody has seen time. Nobody has heard time. Nobody has tasted time. Nobody has smelled it. Nobody has touched it. But still, we all know there is time. How did we know that? There should be a certain organ within ourselves which directly comprehends all these transcendental entities without the help of mind and the five sensory organs. That's what is called sAkshee. Now, it does various stuff for you. This is about our own self. It's not a theory anymore. For that matter, it's wrong to call it a doctrine. Because doctrine, as I said, it's only a belief thing. But when it comes to sAkshee, Srimad Madhvacharya says, sAkshee khulu sarva pramana pramanya nischayakaha. All the validities about every piece of knowledge is arrived at. The final arbitrator for that is your own sAkshee or conscience. Let's give the word conscience. I don't want to call it consciousness because consciousness is a state. Conscience may be a better word for it. But in the West, the word conscience is basically used. Say for example, you want to do something good or bad. Should I do this or not? Like the Keshava was giving an example of people hiding and somebody wants to hurt them. Should I tell him or not? At some point, somebody in you tells you, I don't do it. That's your conscience. In that sense, the West uses the word conscience, to be conscious. But the sAkshee of Acharya Madhva is much more comprehensive. It does this also, the dharma, adharma, which are again transcendental entities. You can't say, give me 5 grams of dharma. There is no such thing. It's not a physical entity at all. If it were, Kmart would have sold dharma for $10 on sale today, isn't it? But that's not how it is. So therefore, all these transcendental entities can only be comprehended not with the mind, not with the 5 sensory organs. It has to be directly perceived by what we call sAkshee. Even dharma and adharma or its objects. So we said there are 2 types of jnana. One is vritti jnana, that's produced by the mind and 5 sensory organs. Then the Atma-jnana, the knowledge that Sakshi comprehends, is what we call Atma-jnana. It is the self itself. The knowing part of self is called Sakshi. Not that there are parts in self. Achet jo yavadakyo, we know it from Gita. That the self is not, you can't divide it any further. However, due to what we call savishesha abheda, you can converse as though it has these different properties. I won't get into the doctrine of Vishesha here, that is for the next conference. Then Sri Madhva, in a work called Pramana Lakshana, he says, Pratyaksham Saptavidam. He included the Sakshi in Pratyaksha itself. As you all know, Pratyaksha is perception, then inference, and finally verbal testimony, agama. These are the three means of knowledge, what we call pramana. These are generators of Jnana itself is pramana, it comprehends itself. And therefore you have what we call anupramana and keval pramana and all. Anyway, again, epistemology is at the very foundation of philosophy. Philosophy is like a beautiful building that you have built. But if your foundation is not strong, you know what will happen. Therefore, we examine the epistemology of a philosophy. If there are flaws in it, if there is no economy of thought, what we call it, what do we mean by the economy of thought? For example, even today, people teach there are 6 pramanas. But actually there are only 3, Pratyaksha and Manana, because the other 3 have been rolled up into these 3. Srimad Madhvacharya has shown this in the 13th century. Now we are sitting in the 21st century and we still teach as though there are 6 pramanas. They are not. It has been shown. Go and study books, you will know how. If it was science, we would have corrected ourselves. Scientists have no problem giving up their pet theory and moving on. But not in Vedanta. How can my teacher be wrong? That's where we begin our thought. But anyway, we will get to that also in a moment. So there are basically 2 types of knowledge. Why are you progressing, man? He is my friend, by the way. So there are 2 types of knowledge, vritti and atma-jnana. And we also go through 3 different states. The waking, hopefully you're all in that state now, some of you may not be. And then you have the dreaming state, and finally the deep sleep where you don't even dream. Of course, Upanishads also talk about a 4th state called Turiya. We will not bring that here today. So if you examine all the pieces of knowledge we have, we can divide it into 2. There are certain types of knowledge which are doubtless. One of them is my own identity. You never sit there and think, am I me or my brother? Nobody thinks like that, isn't it? Or when you are happy, you don't get a doubt, am I happy or sad? You don't get the doubt. Similarly, when you are sad, you don't get the doubt, am I sad or not? All such experiential type of knowledge is doubtless. So there is somebody in you which, when comprehends, it will become doubtless for you. That is Sakshi. So the knowledge comprehended by Sakshi is always doubtless. There is no doubt about it. And more importantly, this is a great contribution by Acharya Madhva. He says, there is no such thing as ayata artha, grasped by Sakshi. Sakshi will always, as a rule, will grasp only that which is true. It only grasps truth. Of course, a statement like this will create a lot of questions. Then how come not everybody gets it? How come many of us didn't get it right? And so on. We don't have a Sakshi now? Of course we have. So we will get to all that in a month. Right? So, whenever your knowledge becomes experiential to you, it becomes doubtless. You may read about it, you may hear about it, you may listen to various lectures and get a little bit of what we call indirect knowledge. Paroksha Jnana. But when it becomes aparoksha, that is a direct knowledge for you, then it becomes doubtless. Therefore, Shastra has been asking us to get it from Shastra first, all the Paroksha Jnana. But at some point, you have to make it into your own experiential type of knowledge. Then only doubts will go. Upanishads make it very clear. Vidyate sarvya granti kshidante sarva samshayaha kshiyante cha sakarmani tasmin nishte paravare. There are a lot of Upanishads behind this. Now, this is object. The objects of Shastra. This is from Jayakrishna in a work called Pramana Paddhati. It says Tatra Swarupendriyam Sakshi Chichate. We call it Swarupendriya. It is an Indriya. Why? Because we include it in Pratyaksha. Pratyaksham Saptavidam Sakshi Shadindriya Vedena. And therefore he establishes it as a Swarupendriya. It is actually an organ. But it is the self itself. So it grasps itself. Tasya Vishayaha. What are the objects of this Sakshi? Atma Swarupam, the knowledge of I. Tad Dharma. You have Satya, Chita, Ananda, all your characters. Tad Dharma. Avidya. Avidya. See, I am not a doctor. I never went to medical school. I have no doubt about it. I never even once get a doubt. Am I a doctor? No. That's why, because it is grasped by Sakshi, my own avidya of not being a doctor. The medicine, lack of knowledge of medicine. That avidya, I know it well. And that's why it's grasped by Sakshi. Avidya. Manaha. Where is mind included here? Think about it for a second. Mind is a product of Prakriti. You are right, Dr. I don't know. It is a product of Prakriti, as Jiva Goswami has observed it too. The mind is inert. Inert means it is lifeless. Atman is Chaitanya. Sakshi is Chaitanya. So, the way Sakshi works is exactly like the way light works. So we say Jnana Jyoti for that reason. What is the nature of light? When you switch on the light, it establishes itself and it illumines all the objects around it. That is exactly how knowledge also works. It first establishes itself, it grasps itself, and then it illumines all the things around it. Mind is one of the things that is around it. This is how what from Atman to the mind to the Indriya to the object. So it's like a telescopic thing that has to happen. When it happens, you will grasp that knowledge. And the knowledge of knowledge is grasped by Sakshi. Got it? Then, alright, then the question is, why can't we say the mind itself is doing all this? Just as the brain itself is doing all this. Why not the mind itself? Why create an extra entity in you if you don't have to? This is the law of economy of thought, I say. So, for example, people that say abhava, take abhava etc. Non-existent. There are 4 types to that. Srimad Madhvacharya corrected them. There are only 3 types. Because the 4th one actually can be rolled up in these 3. Nigrahasthana. There's a 21 of them. He said no, there are only 6 of them. He rolled it up into 6, like that. He has done a lot of fundamental work for us in epistemology. So here again, why can't you say the mind itself is doing all this? Well, where did he go forward? My friend, get back. So here, no, not that far. Come to Canopy 8. 8 slide number 8. Yeah, how do we know we know? There you go. Yeah, this is it. How do we know what we know is valid? That's another question. We know many things, but how do you know it's valid? All these questions were. This knowledge of knowledge, some people call it Anuvyavasaya, we will call it Sakshi. Why can't you say the mind itself is grasping all this? Why posit another internal organ? Is it an indispensable thing or not? Right? So first, to understand, get a better handle on all this, we should understand what is called Pramanya Svatastva. That is the self-validity of true knowledge. Let's get there. Now, validity of knowledge, right? Validity of true knowledge is intrinsic to it, this side. Whereas the wrongness of the wrong knowledge comes from external causes. But then, we can't even deny this. That is the beauty of this. Try denying it, see what happens. At least you have to accept that your denial is true, isn't it? Denial is intrinsically true. You have to accept it, which means you have accepted that Jnana is intrinsically true. If you say no, then what happens? You are denying with something that is not even true. How are you going to deny? See, that's a denial is impossible in this. You can go home and think about it. That's why I put it there, think about it. Anyway, the invalidity comes from external conditions. For example, subpar conditions. So I have to wear my glasses for 2020. If I take it out, now everything is blurry. If I read A, B, C, everything is same to me now. And therefore, when conditions of cognition are subpar, wrong knowledge results. Whereas, when the conditions of cognition are perfect, whatever you see, the indriya, manas, and then the object itself, all of them have to line up, then you will get the true knowledge of it. Mind is important here because sometimes you watch TV, your mind is elsewhere, so things have come and gone, I have not seen anything. What did you say? I don't know. But your eye has actually seen it. But your mind was elsewhere. That's why mind has to be behind all this. And then, take the glittering, the silver shell standard example. The glittering is that's not how you see things. After all, what did your eye show? It just showed a glittering object. If you had simply said, oh, there is a glittering object there, then it's yathartha. There is nothing, no bhranti there at all. But the moment you thought it was silver, for whatever reasons, then you got into trouble because it was not, and so on. Similarly, in daytime, if a snake is crawling your driveway, you don't confuse it for a snake or a rope. If there is no proper lighting, that's when you get confused, because both snakes and ropes curl the same way. There are some common properties. So, but then how do we decide the validity of knowledge? If you say you need another piece of knowledge, then it becomes infinite regress. Who is going to fix the validity of that knowledge? You need another piece of knowledge, and so on and so on. So it's not going to happen. Okay, so in general, Jayatirtha has examined all this in detail. There are only 6 ways in which validity can be ascertained. First of all, you can say by an organ that is defective, as we said. Or you can say at least not caused by an organ that is defective. If I have jaundice, and if I talk about color, what will you say? You will say, don't talk about colors yet, go to a doctor, get yourself fixed, then you will talk about colors. Isn't it? Therefore, you need to first make sure that it's not coming from a defective organ. But actually, it's easily said. There is a mutual dependency here, if you think about it. If validity is dependent on the defectlessness of organs, and the defectlessness of organs is dependent on the valid knowledge they produce, then there is a mutual dependency now, which means nothing gets established. That's one issue there. Useful action that follows true knowledge. Well, should every true knowledge have a useful action? Not necessarily. If I say, hey, your uncle is a nice guy, okay, now what is the true action that you're going to do? Slap him? No, you don't do that. There is no useful action for every piece of true knowledge, isn't it? True knowledge is just true knowledge. We call it udasina jnana. That is, there is no action needed after that. And then there is agreement with another knowledge. Well, this is dangerous. Because that knowledge again has to be valid, which means it has to be in agreement with another knowledge, now infinite regress. And then, number 5, at least not in disagreement with another. How about that? Well, there are certain experiential types of knowledge like pain. Okay, my own knowledge of my pain. Take it. What is it similar to? Can you point to something in this world and say it is like that? There is nothing. There is nothing that you can even point to. So there is no, for you to say another, there is nothing another here. But still it's valid. As far as my pain is concerned, it is valid for me. And therefore, all the first 5 possibilities can be ruled out. Why? See what happens. When we see a person, like Swami, we prostrate him and when we meet a friend, we greet him instantaneously. We don't stand there and deliberate, oh, how is this validity of this knowledge? Is he really my friend? Does he look like my friend? Am I in Bhranti? We don't go off on a tangent like that. We just automatically, instantaneously do the next thing. How did we do that? Because validity is intrinsic to that knowledge. Whichever organ grasps the knowledge is also grasping its validity at the same time. That's what is actually happening. Next slide, please. How do we know? Say this is the problems I discussed just now. How do we know organs are flawless? Useful action may not be there always. Awareness, there is nothing else similar to it. Agreement will lead to infinite regress. And finally, and if you say agreement of knowledge with its own kind, then what about succession of illusions? That has to be called true knowledge now, because it was an agreement with that illusion. All those issues will come. That's why the only one thing that we can agree on is, based on our own experience, is that the truth, validity of knowledge is intrinsic to it. It is pramanya svatastha. Next slide, please. Now, Sakshi never grasps ayatartha. This is where, I'm sure there will be a lot of questions after this. If Sakshi also produces knowledge that is ayatartha means as it is not, the knowledge which grabs the object as it is not, that is ayatartha, versus yathartha which grasps the object as it is. If Sakshi also produces knowledge as ayatartha, then everything will be doubted every time. But that's not how we live though. It is on that such a philosophy will be only put on paper, isn't it? And there has to be something which never grasps untruth. That is our own Sakshi. All the untruth we do grasp is because of mind, manas. Right? As the final arbitrator for truth, Sakshi is indispensable. So this is where we started. Why do we need Sakshi? Why can't mind do it? Mind cannot do it because it also grasps untruth. Yat kwaschit vyabhichari syat darshanam manasam hi tadarsham. Verse 6. Next slide, please. Let's talk about a simple example. We all have cell phone, right? Oh, this is my cell phone. We said, I know this cell phone, it's mine. Let's go through that a little bit, see what's going on there. Let's take I. What is I? I is represent the self. Self means the knowledge of my own self, which your mind could not have gotten you. Why? Because we say my mind. Mind doesn't grasp Sakshi. Sakshi illumines your mind. That's why you say my mind. Otherwise you would have said the other way, which we don't even know how to say, because we are not built that way. Therefore, and coming to know, the idea of knowledge, which is again in present time. Time, as you said, is atindriya, only Sakshi can grasp it. And then this, what about this? You are talking about a particular versus the universal. Universal is all the objects of the world in the universe. We distinguish this one object from it. And that's why you are able to identify it as a cell phone. Is it? So I call it ROW, rest of the world, for short. Right? So this, now when you are looking at it, your mind could not have gone all and come back to you. So again, your Sakshi is doing it. The distinction of one object from the rest of the world, which automatically happens to all of us, is also the work of Sakshi. And finally, cell phone. Finally, mind has something to do. Cell phone is a word that you remembered when you saw this object. Remember, eye doesn't know words, isn't it? After all, it just shows you the shape because there is a camera lens built in there. And it shows you an object with a certain shape and color. And you remember the word cell phone. And the mind does that from memory. And between the two, you recognize it as, first time you cognize it, then you recognize it, and that's what we call recognition. So you recognized it as a cell phone. And then, so that is the only work of mind and sensory organs. So I know this cell phone. Next time you say that, note that 3 of them are coming from Sakshi. Only one of them, the cell phone, is coming from your mind and eye. And then, so let's talk about a little bit about mind and Sakshi and memory again. Knowledge of self is even prior to the knowledge of mind. That's why I say my mind. As comprehending itself, it is called Sakshi. Right? This is why we call it Chaitanya. It has to comprehend itself. The idea of knowledge, I know that I know that I don't know, these are all doubtless. And that's all because they're objects of knowledge. Memory can be right or wrong at times. My memory is so hopeless that it's always wrong. Ask my wife, she will tell you. Anyway, it's the work of manas. However, knowledge of memory as a rule is right. That's the beauty. Hence, it is the work of Sakshi. Next slide, please. Knowledge produced by Sakshi, as apprehending even knowledge, must be self-conscious. Right? If not, there is infinite regress again. And we will never arrive at knowledge. I know that I know, I know that I know that I know. So it keeps on going. So because it is Chaitanya, your own self, it puts an end to that cycle, right there, the very first one. The sense organ eye has nothing to do with the rest of the world. I can only show you what is in front. It can't even show you what is behind me, isn't it? And therefore, where is the question of the rest of the world? But unless there is the idea of rest of the world, the distinction of the object from the rest of the world cannot be apprehended. Therefore, this rest of the world is neither the work of the external sense organ nor mind. Therefore, it is caused by Sakshi. So, rest of the world occurs only in a general manner all the time, so as to help the idea of distinction. Hence, it's not very explicit. All this is waking state. Now let's move on to dreaming state and see what happens there. In the dreaming state, your mind and Sakshi function. That's why you get weird dreams. You're going in Madras, 100 degrees, and it is snowing there. It can happen very well in your dream. Because what mind does is, it convolutes data for you. It takes data from Canada, takes data from Madras, and puts it all together and creates a nice dream for you. And therefore, sometimes it's very weird, sometimes it's real, right? If you say like snakes and play with it, or dogs, some people are very scared of dogs. If you're not, in your dream, if you get a dog, you play with it, just like you would do in data. But if you're scared of dogs, you're scared in your dream too. So there is a certain reality. The dream object is real as far as the dream goes. To think that it belongs to the XYZ outside world, that is the only unreality in dream. The experience you get because of your dreams is real. There is nothing unreal about it. Of course, there are Upanishads such as Manduka. We talk about your dream state. You have Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna, and the Vishwanamaka, Paramatma, is creating the daytime experiences for you. Taijasa is in the dream state. Alright, now the Upanishad talks about all that. Next slide, please. In deep sleep, of course, your mind is also sleeping. If you are still dreaming, which means you are not going to this. This is the third step, we call it Sushupti. Here, there is no knowledge of external objects at all. And therefore, there is no mind, there is no external sense. Everybody is sleeping, only your Sakshi is awake. By the way, Sakshi never sleeps. If Sakshi sleeps, God save you after that. So it never sleeps. That's why it's called witness. Sakshi means witness. It witnesses you sleeping actually, the rest of the body sleeping. And that's why it's called witness. So you wake up and see your own experience. I slept happily for 2 hours. Now this experience would not be possible unless it was created while you were sleeping. So there are 3 things here. I, the knowledge of myself, time, and finally your knowledge and ignorance and keeping you intact. All those 3 are given to you while you are deep asleep. Karya karana buddhauto vishyete vishvataija this is Upanishad. Prajna karana buddhastu dvautu tudyena siddhyataha. I won't go through all this, I just wanted you to know. So, Sakshi does not apprehend bare knowledge. It also apprehends its truth. Truth of knowledge does not originate from anything different from the entities that created the knowledge to begin with. Sakshi always comprehends only the truth, because of which this spontaneous activity is possible. And then sometimes the truth of knowledge, there's always an exception, isn't it, to every rule. Sometimes the truth of knowledge is doubted because it is the mind that has grasped the verity and not the Sakshi. Because it's eager to grab. About 4 months ago, I was here in the same temple, and one lady, ran up to me and asked me, "Are you Bandanjay?" She asked me. I first thought, I said, let me say yes and see what happens. And then, what if she started asking me questions, right? I don't know, let's not get it. And said, "No, I'm not sorry, ma'am, I'm Jayakrishna." Oh, she was so disappointed. So if I meet Bananjay, I'm going to request him to keep his goatee for me. I can get my 2 seconds of minimum fame. Yeah. So, if Sakshi never grasps untruth, then if everyone had his own Sakshi, then how come everybody should have grasped only truth? Right? This is the first question we ask. How come that is not the case? And then, go back. Alright. Sakshi apprehends apramanya as apramanya only. That is the beauty here. Okay? If Sakshi apprehends apramanya as apramanya only, grasping truth is its natural power. Hence we say pramanya is intense. Next slide please. I only have one more slide. So what do we do with all this? That is the basic question. Okay, after we hear a lecture about ourselves, self and Sakshi, so what do we do? Srimad Madhya says, well, this is what you do. Shastra yukto anubhavaha pramanam uttamam. Therefore, get your Shastra right first. Because that is something that we can examine. We cannot examine experiences. Isn't it? However, Shastra is very examinable. We do examine. Every school of thought has examined the previous school of thought. It's there in the Darshan Sampradaya. So, in conclusion, Shastrartha yukto anubhavaha pramanam uttamam. Go back, man. So experience by itself is not the best pramana. So unless and until it becomes your own experience that is in line with Shastra, that is the best pramana you have. And therefore, right or wrong can all be sorted out in manana during your contemplation phase. And the good thing is, anything that had a self-contradiction in it can never ever be experienced by anyone. If somebody is saying he has experienced a rope which was also a snake, he is lying to you. It is as simple as that. Because nobody, similarly, Vandhyaputra, because there is a self-contradiction right there. If she had a son, she wouldn't be Vandhya. You know, Vandhya means a barren woman. Son of a barren woman. Who has experienced this? Nobody can, because it's a self-contradicting idea. So anything that has self-contradictions in it can never ever be experienced by anyone. That is why you need to get all your Shastra straight first. Get all the contradictions out. Then your experience after that. So Shravana Nityasana is the answer. That's the only answer in fact. We call it inquiry. Srimad Acharya has put it all together in like this. Brahmatvam, Abrahmatvam, cha sarvam yatim akshina. Nachet sakshi kvachit dushtaha katam nirnayate. Tasmat sarva prasiddhasya vyavaharasya siddhaye sakshi nirdosha eva ekaha sada angikaya eva naha. Then finally, Guru Prasado Balavan, Tasmat Guru, Tasmat Balavattara, Tathapi Shamanadischa, Yoga Moksha Siddhaya, Shri Krishna.